Director Diamond?
Here.
Director Hetherington?
Here.
Director Rolfe?
Here.
Director Stevens?
Here.
And Director Odette is absent.
Okay, special orders of business. Don't think we have anything. Modification of the agenda. Does anybody have any modifications they would like to make on the agenda?
No.
Okay. Speak your piece reminder. Okay. Pay attention. Be aware and attend to the world and the people around you. Listen. Focus on others in order to better understand their points of view. Be inclusive. Welcome all groups of citizens working for the greater good of the community. Don't gossip and don't accept when others choose to do so. Show respect. Honor other people and their opinions, especially in the midst of a disagreement. Be agreeable. Look for opportunities to agree. Don't contradict just to do so. Apologize. Be sincere and repair damaged relationships. Give constructive criticism. When disagreeing, stick to the issues and don't make a personal attack. Take responsibility. Don't shift responsibility and blame onto others. Share disagreements publicly. Okay. Now's the time for public comment. Any public that wants to comment on anything that's not on the agenda tonight? I see Debbie Cohen on Zoom.
Yes. Hi, I'm going to start the video. Hopefully this is working properly. Oops, something happened. Okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Just a
Okay.
reminder, Debbie,
All right.
we have 3 minutes per
Yes.
speaker. Thank you.
Yes, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment today. My name is Debbie Cohen, and I'm Truckee Tahoe Soaring Association Board of Directors, leading fundraising activities for our Youth STEM Academy programs. I know you've heard earlier from TTSA staff earlier today regarding our youth program, but I'd like to share some other important perspectives with you on how the airport, TTSA, and aviation in general together play a critical role in driving youth STEM education in our community. And for starters, STEM-related jobs are the future of our communities and country prosperities. There's lots in the media and others. I believe this is not new news, but STEM proficiencies have been steadily declining, and that's been going on since the 80s. Lots of room for improvement in our public, private school systems. And in particular jobs, one worthy STEM job is a pilot. And I hope all know here, we have a critical pilot shortage in our country, and current aviation schools and military can keep up with demand. The pandemic really fueled a lot of early retirement and more, and we have a problem. Youth aviation education experiences collectively are one of the greatest ways to stimulate interest in the STEM disciplines, something that cannot be achieved in the classroom alone. Aviation enables real-world, exciting, hand-on application of STEM principles and doing it in action. It's unique. There's nothing else like it. Demand for hands-on youth STEM education exceeds the supply of programs in the community, like EAA's Mission to Mars, which is always sold out. Young Eagles is a great program, as several things associated with the air show. All provide some aviation education, but I feel strongly can and should be doing more. The Youth Intern Program, TTSA, is the only no-fee true Learn to Fly program for youth at this airport. With the wonderful airport that we have here in Truckee, combined with TTSA's Youth STEM Academy programs that you heard about earlier, in the early public comment, we have a unique opportunity to get local youth, and we have been getting them excited and engaged in STEM. This program has been going on for many years, and we do a lot more with the proper funding and other operational support. And it wasn't clear for earlier, our programs provide STEM education experiences several ways. When you learn how to fly a glider, and which includes the ground operations, you're involving all STEM disciplines. You have to do every aspect of flying in action. But importantly, these programs are helping you develop other lifelong, if you want to call them mental skills, critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork, communications. That's not something that's taught in a classroom. These are skills that will help youth succeed in any career field, not just as pilots. We'd like to add youth soaring days and a week-long camp this year to bring STEM and action experiences to more youth in our community if we can obtain the necessary funding. You've heard earlier, many of our program participants have gone on to both military and commercial aviation careers. You heard from Preston Parrish today as an example. I spoke also at our board meetings, helped launch his career. We have many more like him. And another point on, what's so special about gliders? Glider pilot skills can also enhance power pilot skills. And everybody knows Captain Sullenberger, the Miracle on the Hudson River, he's a glider pilot. These are skills that come in real handy for power pilots when there are engine failures and more. And if you want to look up more studies, the Gimli glider are examples of commercial airliners engine failures, say because their pilot in command was a glider pilot.
And President
So
Rolfe, we're approaching 4 minutes on the public comment.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Debbie. We're at 4 minutes.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, I asked if hope the board acknowledges our program and in the future considers our formal funding request for these programs. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, is there any other public comment on Zoom or in the room? Okay. Moving on, consent agenda. Somebody like to make a motion?
I move we approve items 1 through 5 on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
It says, go ahead.
Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Okay, roll call?
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens. Director Odette's absent. Motion carries.
Great. Okay, moving on to action items. Policy Instruction 311.
Thank you, Kat.
Yep.
You have a staff report in your board book. This is an item has come back from last month based on board guidance and feedback. Staff is requesting the Truckee Tahoe Airport District Board approve and adopt the TTAD staff, legal, and community foundation recommended edits and format updates to policy 311, community sponsorships and agency partnerships. The district first adopted the official policy, the community giving policy, instruction 311 back in 2015. There are several suggested edits in this latest version of the policy. It includes a legal definition and importance of programs connected to an airport's public purpose, along with better clarification and guidelines and definitions and certain verbiage changes. There's an addition of an annual assignment of priority areas during the annual budget process by the Board of Directors. There is also examples of that priority areas could be STEM education, could be transportation, environmental sustainability. There are a variety of areas the board could consider during the annual budget process to provide guidance as priority areas for the following year budget process, fiscal year. The district has engaged the Community Foundation in April of 2021 as a consultant to manage the administrative and application side of the district's annual agency partnership program for a period of 3 years. That concludes this year, so we will be talking with them and the board in the coming months about renewing that multi-year agreement. The other edits to this current policy include transitioning the staff reviewed and approved or not approved community sponsorships below $5,000 and below, instead of being a staff function, to being a monthly board review and consideration. And that's the highlight of the edits and changes that are in there, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Rick, you want to go first?
How is this sponsorships going to work? Before, it was a senior management team, and then it was moved to our GM, and now it's going to the board. What are you going to bring, the applications that you are recommending to the board for approval or disapproval each month?
The current process follows the current version of Policy 311, which does have members of the senior management team making recommendations, and then myself making a final judgment based on those different recommendations for approval or non-approval or different levels of funding. What I'm suggesting is, rather than having that process, is that the discretion of the board of directors, we would monthly bring the applications to the board of directors with the complete application and present those to the board, either as a consolidated consent element or as a action item based on the nature of the applications that meet the criteria that is established in Policy 311 for the board's review and consideration. That's what I'm suggesting as a new.
So if we approve this, we'll see them every month?
Whenever they are applied. So it could be, there's nothing applied for during a month, there would be nothing that month.
Okay. I'm also concerned about the one-to-one match of the overall request. Many of the agencies may not be able to meet a one-to-one match. I didn't think we were exactly at a one-to-one match in the past, and this seems a significant increase. That's one concern. Another concern, I'm just concerning that we've tightened it up too far. My personal desire is to do more in the community than less, and I don't want this to drive us downward. And I'm concerned about it.
So some of the feedback I did receive from board members was around the desire for the agency partnership portion of this policy to have the agency partner represent either an in-kind or an actual dollar value match to what the district was being requested. So that was one of the edits that I added to the document based on feedback from directors. The other aspects of it, I don't know if the other board members have comments or concerns about that.
My only question about it, and thank you for all the revisions, because I think it was a.
You want to use your microphone?
Oh, sorry. Thank you for the revisions on this, and my only comment now about it, which I guess is somewhat similar to Rick's, is the scope and whether the scope is clearly defined enough that we could articulate to an applicant that this is suitable for them or not. Because it did seem like the language, in some cases, the language was liberal about what could be done. In other cases, it used phrases that might confuse, I think, some of the applicants about whether or not they provided a specific benefit to the district, for example.
Yeah, it's a good comment, David, and it's a very long policy. I would say I would suggest it could be a lot shorter and more concise. So as the longer it got, so we're editing a document that was approved multiple times in different versions over the years. There's a lot of feedback, a lot of fingers in this. So I did not try to attempt to remove or edit all that kind of verbiage out of the document based on board's feedback last time. And instead, I think the guiding elements that are in the beginning of the document hopefully set the character and the tone for the type of programs that would be authorized or approved or desired or appropriate for the use of airport public funds. So the legal definition and examples that are in there, I think, ideally characterize the type of activities that appear appropriate or that need to be connected to that. The language as it flows through is not perfect, I agree, but as much as we could stay very strong with direction to the community foundation, to agency partners, or those that might apply, that the top page, the first sheet, is really the critical part of meeting the criteria of application, and not trying to find some nuance in language on page 6 that might be a loophole for an application. I think if we can be in a unified position with the community foundation, if that's the guidance, without further additional edits, that would be my recommendation.
And do we have any idea, just to kind of help clarify that, for previous recipients, which would maybe not apply or not be eligible, or maybe have their ranking lower under this new lens?
I don't know if I could characterize that. I've not been part of the Community Foundation's grading process in the past. We have had representatives from the district on that. It's hard to tell what each individual was thinking around grading, but there is a rubric that is given, and kind of a litmus test of should they even be applying? If they did apply, does it meet the basic criteria of the legal definition of public purpose of airport for use of funds? I think if we could set that bar to begin with, that would help those on the advisory committee at the Community Foundation make better judgments. I don't know if I could apply that to history and how that might have worked. You know, the most recent example I could think of that received funds from the airport district is the pickleball courts. I like pickleball. It's a great game. It's a growing industry. But I don't know that particular one. I couldn't match the current definition that we're talking about as an appropriate use of public airport funds, as an example.
Okay. And last question for you. This is a tough one. Given what you had said a moment ago, and we are looking at revising a policy, would you rather start over on this policy rather than keep updating what we have? Like, are we stumbling over what we've got now as opposed to completely rethinking it?
I think at this point, the current revisions outside of minor edits, I think is an improvement over the previous policy. So this would be, timing-wise, I believe, good guidance to give to the Community Foundation as they get into the next grant cycle or the next cycle of potential awards. And this kind of guidance that's built into the beginning of this document particularly would be, I think, more helpful, in my opinion, at this point. As we revise these policies and look at them every year as part of an ongoing process, yes, I would love an opportunity perhaps to continue to revisit this to improve it as we go forward.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
So this is better than last month. I still don't think it's ready for prime time. I kind of expressed the same concerns of Rick in terms of has it become too stringent? And I really don't like the idea of the $5,000 less than coming to the board. As it is, thinking 2 years ago, I don't want to be in that position. I think that that's not where we should be. We set up a budget of 100, 120, and I don't want to be doing that game. I'd rather that money almost, you writing a whole new policy, and maybe we don't do the 5,000. Maybe we just do the bigger stuff and move that money over into the bigger stuff. That kind of a thought. Since we're up against a timeline of trying to continue this cycle, I kind of want to just stick with what we got and rework this. Like to your question, like in the 20 tab in here that has the 2021, we would not fund Humane Society, the bike, the Gateway Center, the Gateway kids, the AED, the hunger efforts. And I think those are good things, that are shown in the 21. So those are things that affect our community. there's other things in here like land management or forest management that I think should be captured in here potentially, because those are other things that affect all of our constituents, and we could do more with those areas. There's a lot of references in here to Nevada, or, including that, and I think going back in time, that was part because Parasol Foundation was doing Project Manna at the time, but Project Manna is now based here. And so I don't know that I feel good allowing Nevada nonprofits applying or out of sphere of influence. I think it's limited to our district boundaries. So that's one of the changes I would say that should be in here. And I don't think that's a minor thing. That's why I'm saying I kind of want to stick with what we have for now and address the whole thing. I think we want to talk about operating support. We're not providing operating support, but I'm wondering in terms of how we wrestle with this, if that's something we do in fact want to consider. Like I say, I don't want us doing the $5,000 versions. And I really do like the Community Foundation developing the rubric, because they have people from all over our district involved. They have this process developed, and I think that I want to keep that going. The other notes I have, along with operating, how are we feeling about capital campaigns or the last minute funding opportunities? How do we, this is what we need to wrestle with in this. And instead of band-aiding the policy and then band-aiding it again and band-aiding it again, I'd like us to really wrestle with this and get it right the next time. When it first came into place, it was trying to get an arms around it because there wasn't anything. There's a thing in here about for-profit organizations, and I'm not sure where that came from, and I'm not sure how that fits in. Again, something to wrestle with. And that's it. So at this point, because we have a funding cycle coming, I would prefer that we just go with the existing and try to get a cleaner system in the realm of having just dealt with the strategic plan and instead of being reactive, being proactive in terms of how we want this looking going forward.
Well, I think it's a great document. Well, I hear what you're saying about you have concerns about it moving forward. However, I'm not sure we can ignore the legal piece of it, because now we have an opinion from Josh, and I think we're going to have to hold ourselves to that, or hold this next cycle to that. I heard Josh say during a break, I think, is that of the last group that applied, there was only one that wouldn't fit into your legal definitions. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think, the public purpose is the legal, standard for the use of airport funds, and so it has to meet a public purpose for us to move forward. I think, I would agree with Rob. I think if you look at the last cycle, the one expenditure that probably be the most difficult to fit within the rubric would have been the pickleball. I think the others would have fit within some of these, but I think Director Hetherington, to your point, I mean, if there are additional ones, and I heard land management, forest management, that should be added to that sort of non-exclusive list of examples. I mean, that we could absolutely do that. If that would provide additional help, because to the extent it's use of airport land, like land management or forest management, that's absolutely an appropriate public purpose. When we were putting this example list together, we just kind of, as staff, thought about the ones that we, heard the most from the board as sort of strategic priorities, or the ones that came up the most. And it wasn't necessarily intended, it was not intended to be an exclusive list. And so if we should add more, we absolutely can. And I would note that, the new revised legal requirements, does acknowledge that, this determination of a public purpose can be made on a case-by-case basis, and the courts do give deference to what the board decides. So I think it's helpful, or at least, I personally believe it's helpful to kind of lay out the obvious ones and the ones that are, maybe district priorities as determined by the board. And then if there are other ones that through the funding cycle, the community foundation and then ultimately the board feels are appropriate, we can look at them on a one-on-one basis and see if we can fit them in a public purpose some other way.
So Josh, why, this might seem like a silly question, but if public purpose is the litmus test, why not pickleball courts?
Because when you're it's public purpose under the law is determined by the type of agency that you are. So if you're the town or if you're the county, it's pretty broad, right? I mean, like if it's betterment of the community, it's pretty much a public purpose. Now the test for special districts is a little bit different just because, we don't have the ability to sort of do everything. We can actually only do what fits within our enabling statute. So for us, the Constitution is the airport district law. And then anything else. And so it's sort of a flipped rubric. So for us, public purpose is defined as anything an airport could do, which is pretty broad. And I think, the examples that we're talking about are is consistent with that, but there is kind of limitations. And something like pickleball, which isn't connected to, noise mitigation or, something like, the golf course would be an example of, it does have an aviation related purpose because it's kind of, helping to reduce inconsistent land uses. That's where pickleball is a little bit more challenging.
Can we go back to the fact that this money is really coming out of property tax? It really is. That's in my opinion. And that's really not aviation oriented. Why should we even have the airport use designation if the money's out of property tax? Couldn't we do anything we want with it?
So this test, it isn't dependent on where the revenues come from. It's focused solely on the expenditures. And so I don't disagree with you, Director Stevens, from maybe a policy perspective. But on the legal side, they don't look to where the money came from, even if it came from something like property tax. They look to, whether it's within the public purpose of the agency spending it.
Well, I don't like that opinion, but thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know, before we go on, I'd love to hear from Phyllis what she thinks.
I wasn't finished, actually.
Excuse me.
That's okay. A couple of things that were brought up. One, I do believe in the last cycle, we denied half of the pickleballs asked because of their match. And I think we were consistent with it for that last cycle. Is that correct? And I'm curious, I mean, I think that's appropriate, but I'm thinking you don't think so. Is there, can you?
What?
Oh, no, you weren't the one who said, you were the one who was worried about the match. Is that right?
No.
Who was
I
it?
think that was the conclusion.
No, the one-to-one match.
The one-to-one match, yeah.
Where is
That was
that?
Rick.
What part of
Oh,
it?
yeah, that was Rick. You were worried that some of the agencies couldn't come up with a one-to-one match? Okay,
Yes.
okay. So I'd like to hear from Phyllis on that, but I would also like to know, as far as the $5,000 awards, why the board members are opposed to us putting that on consent and having eyes on it.
It's just one more thing for us to do, and I thought it was working well in the past, and it's, it's our opinion now instead of staff's opinion. And, I don't know, apparently it wasn't working before, or then I was concerned that it was being taken over by Rob exclusively, and I think his reaction was, okay, you guys do it.
I think what they're proposing is that they give us a recommendation and that it could be on consent, so it's not taking a lot of time, but, I mean, you'd have to read through it.
Yes, you would.
Yeah, so that's time.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And you were opposed to it too, is that?
Well, and you are opening it up for people coming and saying, I need this, and bringing in a soccer team, and I need this, because we saw that in the past.
Yes, we did.
And I don't want to be there. I think that we had another system that worked. Like I say, I'm not sure we want to keep that part, and that would be something I'm curious, because you're tapped into needs in the community much more than I am. And, that goes back to that parental choice, and it's almost like I kind of thinking moving that money into the bigger pot and doing more agency partnerships with that bigger pot. We didn't even spend it all last year. So,
Okay.
so that would be my only thought. I don't want to get in, that's why I liked it when the Community Foundation came back with a matrix, said these meet the criteria. We had minor discussion on it, and we in the end gave them, Alice said, okay, this is the money. I don't want the previous year to come up again, where we have to go through each one individually, and then we have people showing up, and we don't have this expertise. It's not, we know we have a responsibility to the community at large, and we're trying to do that. And that's what I like that function better.
Okay.
So,
Did you have thoughts on that, David, or?
I don't have a good thought on it. I mean, my thought on it is that it's not, and this is what I think about in general, it's not our money. It is the taxpayers', the providers' money. And I think anything that abstracts the five of us from making decisions specifically about the use of that money for community benefit, I think is a good idea, because we're not the Community Foundation. We don't have that qualification. We don't have that depth of understanding of what's going on. That said, I'm not sure staff does either. So, that's I understand Rob's position about it would be, to go through there, vet some stuff, make a recommendation, and bring it to us. I'm not sure that it's a net improvement over that.
All right. Phyllis, do you have anything you'd like to? Sure. Yeah, use the mic.
Can you hear me okay with that? Okay. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I appreciate the opportunity. I think this policy revision that we have right now definitely tightens up a lot of language. There were at least 6 different phrases that have now been replaced with public purpose of an airport, so there's that continuity throughout, and that all refers back to the new section called legal requirements that Josh has talked about, that gives some examples that we know will fall squarely within that. So I appreciate that. My role at the Community Foundation is to support and advocate for all the nonprofits in our region. That's how broad we are. And so I have to take that hat off and put on this hat as a consultant that has been hired to run a process for you and to follow your instruction. So I just want clarity. The Community Foundation wants clarity on what we are allowed to do under this. If it is a pot of funds that is not open to all, I need to be able to explain that next week in our workshop for potential candidates, to explain that, you know what, you're not a good fit for this funding source, and that's okay. I just need to know that. And so in some ways, we have a list of things that we know will be met, but there is still language in there that talks about broad community benefit. And now the language is back in about serving constituents as opposed to just airport purpose. And so it's left a little broad in one respect and narrow in others, and I'm still unclear. So just to be perfectly frank, I'm just a little unclear as to what, to say to applicants about that. So if it, according to Josh, and I don't have your full legal opinion, and I'd love to read that seriously, to just understand, okay, I get it, this is special district, special agency, special district, excuse me, and this is what we have to abide by. That's clear cut for me. So then I can say that. I haven't read it, so I don't have an opinion that I can say, yes, I agree with it or not. I can understand that you don't like it, if it's not as broad as you would like. I don't know what discretion the board truly has under the Airport Act, so I can't give you an opinion on that. Yes, would I like it to be open to all? Yeah, sure, of course. Our nonprofits need a lot of funding. There's not a lot of places to turn for that. That is their job. They don't have a steady revenue source like you guys do with property taxes. So that's their job, to cobble together funds year after year for the things that they do to benefit this community. I am concerned, I think, Rick, you did bring it up, the one-to-one match. I am a little concerned about that because I don't know if you're going to find enough public agencies that are willing to meet your airport purpose and a broad community purpose and a one-to-one match and agree to do all that and get a formal resolution passed for a nonprofit to be the lead applicant. That's a lot of hoops to jump through. So I don't know if they'll just be disinterested and say, nope, we can't do that. Sorry. I don't know if that's just making it so much harder for another public agency to partner with you. So, just pragmatically speaking, I just don't know what that's going to do to nonprofits seeking a partner to be able to apply for this. So, anything else while I'm up here? Any questions for me?
Does anybody have any questions for Phyllis?
I'm just concerned, we did 2 years ago about $650,000, maybe it's not that a right amount, but close. And we went through each one individually, and that was an awful process. And the last year, we just voted the recommendation up or down, and then went down to a smaller amount, under 500, when we had allocated 500. And I'm concerned that this thing will drive it farther. And I really don't like that. And as far as the sponsorships, I'm willing to give it a try and see how it works. But I'm just really concerned that this will cut it down farther. And I'll speak for Teresa that she won't like it either. Because she was unhappy with we did under the 500. So you guys know where I stand. I campaigned on it in 16 and in 20, and I'm not campaigning again, but I still believe it.
So I have a question for Josh, and it's public purpose, but when I read your legal requirements, I don't see how the Humane Society, Biking for a Better World, the Gateway Mountain Center, the AEDs, how they fit under here. The Project Manna, the hunger relief issues. They don't fit under here.
Yeah, I don't have the full list of all those, and we can follow up on each of them, but I can just use the AED as an example.
Well, that's an easy one. Let's not talk about it. Because that one you could make the argument because it's fire. But tell me how, Gateway Mountain Center, kids who are at risk. How about people who are hungry? That does not fit any of these. And yet it's a critical need in this community.
Yeah, so I don't really think, right now, off the cuff is probably the right time to have that conversation. I think we can, we did review this, and I cannot remember off the top of my head each of those justifications that we were comfortable with. But I just would emphasize that if it isn't a public purpose, then we can't use the funds, right? And so I think, it's important to note that, this is one of those situations where it only becomes an issue if it is put in front of a decision maker, either like an attorney general or a court or someone, and so there's a significant amount of gray.
Right. And this policy has been in place since 2015, and this questioning has only come up last year.
No, so No,
I've got-
2 years ago,
Brent had-
the board will remember that on the fly, we were modifying motions to draw connections to the airport. So, I do think this is something that has come up every funding cycle. And as staff, we have done everything we can to draw those connections so the board can make the finding that something is a public purpose.
And I agree, and I like the wording, public purpose. But when you, as it's set forth, and you have these 8 bullets, and we could add land management or forest management, but when I look at what we've done in the past, and I go, what bullet does that fit under? I can't make a linkage.
So we
think
don't,
Josh
again,
has
what I'm trying to say,
those.
those bullets are non-exclusive, and they were included in the draft to try to, I think, get to Phyllis's, point, or I'm not gonna speak for her, but I think the point that we heard about that there wasn't sufficient guidance for applicants in the policy as to things that would be absolutely okay. So that list is intended to be things that are, there is absolutely no question. If someone brings a program in front of this board that is, aviation related, no question. Transportation related, no question. Aviation related noise mitigation or avoidance, no question. Accommodating conflicting land uses, absolutely. Public safety, yes. STEAM, yes. Workforce housing, yes. GHG reduction, yes. To just try to say these are, because this is an area where there's a significant amount of gray, the thought was, why don't we put some examples of things that are absolutely okay, and then things that are more in the gray, the board could handle on a case-by-case basis. And we as staff, if the board wants to move forward, we'll do everything we can to draw those, make those findings and draw those connections, like we've done in past funding cycles, so that we can fund it and we can justify it as an airport public purpose.
Sounds good. I go back to Phyllis. Given what he said, does that give you the parameters you can work within next week? Or is it still too fluffy? Still too vague?
No, I think that helps. And I do like having a list of, here's the green light.
So where's
At
the
least
yellow and the
in
red
theory,
light?
we'd still, obviously do our due diligence and make sure it met, the parameters otherwise. But to know that the project request had a green light, that's great. There is gray area. I mean, we can certainly reach out beforehand. This is something that we talked about in our debrief last time with Rob and Josh was, getting a lot of that input, legal counsel beforehand, before we make recommendations for your approval in a formal meeting. So that it isn't something that Josh is having to scramble to do, to meet the airport purpose, that he's already had time to give it thought and weigh in on it for us. So
On
I
the
think it's-
match, would you prefer it to be, I would prefer it to be smaller. What number would you pick?
I don't know that I suggested a number. I think it can vary, because if you have an agency asking you directly, just agency to agency, to partner with it for something, again, I'm looking to, is that their typical mission? We go back to the Rec and Park. That's why we just, our committee said, yes, it's a community benefit. They met the test then where the language in the policy instruction said, that a community benefit was good enough. So they met that, but we just felt like that was Rec and Park's mission. That was their direct mission to, provide recreation facilities. And so why were they even asking for airport support? And so if you did want airport support, you shouldn't be asking for more than what you were willing to put in, if that's truly your mission.
Right.
So on this, but then when you flip that around, it's like, okay, airport district, why are you requiring another district to support an airport public purpose that's out of their mission with at least as much as you're willing to put in it? So I just, just that balance of what's reasonable for other public agencies to think about and supporting. And a lot of times these are nonprofits coming to them, And it might fall under their public purpose, it might not. It might be something that they know that maybe we can get everybody to join in and do something. That was what the Turk wanted to do for the boat for Lake Tahoe to replace the old one. They were trying to
Right.
get all the public agencies to buy into that because of the importance of the research boat. So, again, if you're requiring a one-to-one match, some weren't able to do that. Some could only do up to $25,000 without going to another level of approval or whatever it was. I just don't know all the parameters that other public agencies have to deal with to be able to participate.
So I think it's worth, on that note, page 8 of the clean copy of this document, Policy Instruction 311 revised, under eligibility criteria, number 2, the partnering agencies shall outline their direct investment, funding, or in-kind contribution being applied to the agency partnership request. Typically, the district requires significant, at least equal to TTAD funding request. In-kind or direct cash contributions or ongoing care and maintenance of a program or facility by the partnering public agency for application to qualify for district funding under Policy Instruction 311, agency partnerships. So again, I think the operative word here is typically. It didn't say absolutely required. So it does provide some opportunity for folks to make a justification of why they would not, in the case of the pickleball court, at least match what they're asking another public agency that's outside their core mission.
Right, and when they applied, they didn't really mention the in-kind. They didn't factor that in.
Right.
So I like that addition of that.
So it's not a pure
So,
one-to-one.
yeah,
That's
right.
not a correct characterization of the way it's drafted right now. It is, as I read it, it is a guidance to, we'd like to see other public agencies participate when they request funds of this agency in an equal fashion, but it's not,
Another green light.
it's a
Yeah.
request, a guidance, but it's
Right.
not a red line, you have to or don't have to.
So maybe we could replace requires with requests. I mean, the typically kind of,
Yeah,
gives
to me,
that
that's
gray area,
like
but-
the nuance kind of, we can easily adjust that kind of language in
Right.
here. I was trying to capture the spirit and intent of what I was hearing
yeah.
on these various things.
Well, I think that all of us, and Teresa included, really don't want to see money left on the table, ever. And that did happen the last time. So I think, I mean, Phyllis, yeah, it just goes against your grain to do that. So, I mean, I would like to make it easier for, I know it's a huge application. And what concerns me is, the point at which an agency is told, well, you really don't qualify for this funding, and they've already put in a ton of work, because there's a lot of work. I mean, getting on the agenda for whatever other agency board they have to do, and there are a lot of hoops to jump through.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you have a pretty good understanding of what Josh's opinion is. Is there a way that you could connect with Josh on something you see red flag, like that comes in pretty early, and say,
Yeah.
I really don't think that's.
If you're,
Yeah, and I
open
think
to
we had
that.
talked about that when we did the debrief. I mean, I think, to some of the points that have been raised earlier, it's likely that if we get a request that may not fit within the four corners of what we think is an airport purpose, we can probably tweak it slightly and fit it within there. And the sooner we can do that, the better off for both the applicant,
Right.
but also for the foundation, and then ultimately for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we've done is set up an eligibility quiz now. So
Oh.
applicants have to go through that first,
Okay.
kind of self-test.
Oh, great.
The wording of it comes from the policy instruction.
Okay.
So again, that's why I'm glad that a lot of this is tightened language. But, yes, we keep an eye on that and see who's passing and who's failing, if you will, to see who, what kind of
Yeah.
projects are out there. So
Yeah.
that's our point in time where if I see something like that, I can bring it to Josh's attention, and hopefully we can get, an opinion before they go further and do the full application.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the portal opens next week.
28th, yes.
Yeah.
We have a webinar at 2 o'clock on the 28th.
Okay.
We already, last time I checked, there were 18 already signed up to
Oh.
attend.
Wow.
Some new ones, some,
Oh, okay,
some
good.
prior year applicants, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Tuesday. Oh, yeah, Tuesday. Okay.
Just in that, there are some cleanup in here that needs to get, I mean,
Yeah.
beneficiary of programs. One of it includes individuals, groups, and not-for-profit agencies and for-profit entities located outside the district political boundaries, but within its sphere of influence, as long as the proposed program benefit members of the district as outlined here. Are
Yeah, I
we
believe
good
that's
for
similar, that's
for-profit
almost exact
entities?
language that was already in the policy.
I know,
Right.
but I'm
It's not
just saying,
changed, right?
are we agreeing that for-profit entities, are there for-profit entities that apply? And individuals?
There's a clause in there that say they have to, the proceeds have to benefit a nonprofit, and they have to show proof that those proceeds went to a nonprofit. I think that one goes back
Right.
to like a wine walk
Correct.
and shop
Yeah.
thing downtown several years back that asked for funding. This was before TTCF's contract, but they were not a, 501c3
Right.
nonprofit, but they chose one, to get
Okay.
the proceeds from it. So I think that might have been what.
Oh,
and-
okay.
And outside the district's political boundaries.
That might have been the parasol thing.
So that might be,
Project
that
Mana.
beneficiary language, I think, should be cleaned up. And under common definitions, H has, they're registered to do business in the state of California or Nevada. Again, I'm trying to serve our district, and if an entity registered in Nevada, I'm ambivalent about that.
Sometimes an agency that's registered in Nevada does work in California, like
Yeah.
the Pyramid Bikeway. She was based in
Yeah.
Reno,
Okay.
but
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, particularly in this region with the
Yeah.
proximity to the border.
Fair.
And
Yeah,
there's
that's
some
fair.
that are actually incorporated in both states. There's by state incorporation. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. The other part about for-profit organizations, again, that's taken from the old language, 11, under eligibility criteria, number 11, looking at that, the for-profit again. And Nevada's in here another place, too. That was, that has that old heritage. And I can't find it right now. So that's a search to deal with. And I think that our focus is the district boundaries.
yeah, I mean, we come up against this in the Community Foundation, where nonprofits in Incline are serving a lot of people who need those services in Kings Beach. Right? So they're crossing the state line to get the services, but the services are benefiting the people in our
Okay.
region. And so I think, and that's
Is
not.
that still true?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It is? Okay.
Yeah.
I stand corrected then.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think-
I'm good.
Oh.
I'm going to make an uncomfortable motion.
Oh, should
Pardon
we
me?
have public comment first?
Oh, yeah, that too?
I'm not sure, I have some more things to say.
Yeah.
Okay. So it feels like there are a lot of things going on here. First and foremost, I want to make sure you have what you need to conduct this next grant cycle, and that you feel supported by Rob and Josh if you need to rely on them for that. Okay. I think there's some bigger questions to talk about later. Your point of those $5,000, that's something you and I have been talking about for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see that revisited. I think for now, it makes sense to keep it the way it is. because it doesn't
The way it
seem
is
like.
here, or the
No,
way
well, the way that it
staff?
has been,
So that needs to be changed in here.
just because I feel like there's not a good consensus to
To bring it to us.
to bring it to us. And actually, I hadn't even thought about bringing the whole soccer team in.
Yeah,
I mean, that was a zoo.
yeah, it was.
So,
It'll
you know,
happen.
we've been through that. So,
This goes back to when you were on ACAT and you were
Oh, yeah.
telling us, clean it up.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. With Lisa Kruger.
Huh?
So there's that, and I felt like I had one more point, and now it's,
I'm sorry, about the 5,000.
that's
To leave that as it is now.
as it is, but I think we need to agendize that, make a decision.
I think
And that
there's
could be
other
part of
things-
our strategic plan, too.
Yeah, I think that touching this in our strategic plan
Yeah.
could be good.
Yeah. Okay.
But for now, as long as it gets back to on staff, senior staff, with, in the consent calendar, you can tell us what you do. But I prefer that than
Yeah.
having everybody show
That
up.
makes sense, yeah.
And I think having land management and forest management added to the bullets, being very clear.
Great.
Are you suggesting continuing with the past practice of the 5,000 below?
Yes.
With different,
For now.
For now.
so my concern with that is you've set up a system where I have my senior directors all essentially voting on different requests for funding, right? And so they express their opinion about, somebody requests 5,000, somebody thinks it should be 3,000 or 2,000 or 1,000 or 0. And it's not defined in the policy, but I arbitrate that and apply my opinion at the end of that based on feedback of staff. My opinion doesn't always agree with the recommendations of staff. And as pointed out last month by Director Stevens, 2 requests I denied that I thought had nothing to do with the legal definition that's been provided. And so I denied them, despite recommendations. And so I find myself now in conflict with my staff and also in conflict with individual directors because I interpret legal definition the way it is. And so you've set up this ongoing conflict between myself and my team and the board of directors individually and as a group. And I find that a fairly untenable position to continue on a regular basis. You're asking me to apply judgment, but then questioning my judgment on a regular basis. And then allowing me or putting me in a position to constantly question the judgment of the opinion of my staff.
So,
Would you be open to the idea of forming a working group with 2 directors and yourself, and that those 3 people make these decisions?
I am comfortable with making these decisions with authority without creating a committee. I am perfectly comfortable making decisions on awarding funds based on a defined criteria. But the defined criteria I'm using is the guidance I'm being given by our council.
Right.
And that sounds like it's not sitting well with the board. But I find that is direction I'm going to follow because that's direction from council. And I take that as it is. But I'm hearing that's in conflict with the board's interpretation. So again, you're setting me up for conflict
Yeah.
on a regular basis with your interpretation of legal requirements of giving out $1 at a time or $5,000 at a time.
what I wonder is taking out
And we're spending a lot of time and energy on this.
what policy.
As much as you don't want to do that, you're just pushing it back at me, so the team's showing up in our offices instead in the lobbying, or lobbying individual directors. Right.
So what I'm thinking, and this go as a question for Phyllis, is let's not do the 5,000 and below. Let's roll that money into the bigger issue. And wondering what people think about that.
The 5,000 and below, they're not worth the process that the
No,
partnerships have to go through. So I don't agree with you.
No, I'm.
No, she's saying we just get rid of the 5,000.
The
We get rid of the
100,000,
sponsorships.
yeah.
And roll the 100K. I think we had 20
So-
for the scholarship, and the other 100K goes into
Then we
the
won't do
partnership.
anything on the smaller numbers. 'cause
That's
they-
what- that's-
They won't go through that process.
Yeah, they
Correct.
It's too complicated. I think that's a bad idea.
Okay.
What a mess this is.
This is a mess.
Yeah, I think for smaller contributions to appropriate, applications should be a very easy process and not have a lot of strings attached to it. I absolutely agree, Rick.
Yeah.
We don't need to make it complicated for small organizations that are seeking some funding at some level. And we shouldn't have to, force them to have a banner up and have a publication. And
Yeah.
to me, this is small dollars. We should, if it aligns with our public purpose, it should be an easy process to undertake, whether that's in a board monthly action or by my action with my team. But what I'm seeing is that the current review of the criteria for giving out that money is being much more scrutinized, and we have different opinions about that.
Yeah, well, what I see is that it was never scrutinized at all before. I mean, it was just kind of a first come, first serve. Typically not even the full amount, which I've always.
Sponsorships, you mean?
Yeah, the sponsorships, yeah. I mean, if somebody comes and asks for $3,000, give them $3,000. I've never understood this whole idea, well, we'll just give you 1,000 of the 3,000. I mean, if they need 3,000, give them the 3,000, and then when the money's gone, the money's gone. But I do,
Yeah, so when I look at those since I've been here, I find quite a few of them marginally related to a public purpose of the airport.
right.
And so I've gently said reduce numbers for a while, and some of them I said no, it absolutely has nothing to do with the purpose of these funds.
Yeah.
But I know that is not a popular opinion. And
Maybe
I'm happy
Josh
to have
should
the
do
board
it.
make that popular
We'll get
decision.
Josh to get.
I would like to defer to you, and there was a question on this last bills, and you answered it appropriately to me, and I was fine with it. So I would trust you to take care, because I just see it turning into a circus again.
Yeah.
And I would trust you. We trusted before, and I would like to just keep it, it's on you. You don't even have to involve senior staff, because you gave me a good reason on those other two that you did fund.
Can we agree as a board, if we ask staff to do it, that we will not criticize them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that the answer?
I mean, I think we just,
Yes.
apparently.
I don't mind criticism. I take board feedback, absolutely.
No, but
I'm
you're talking about conflict, and we don't want to set you up for
I'm
conflict.
gonna, yes, I'm trying to avoid the unnecessary conflict, right? So
Unnecessary
I'm gonna follow legal's guidance on this, and I'm happy to continue those. I definitely, value the feedback of the team on these applications. It's a little bit of an overly complicated process, even on our part, I would say. It doesn't need to be that involved, to be perfectly honest. I'd like to turn the whole thing over to Jeff and just let him do it, to be perfectly honest. Or Kelly.
Tag, you're it.
I would say if you are uncomfortable doing this with staff, I would be willing to take it on consent, knowing that occasionally it's going to turn into a circus, but every circus gets 3 minutes. And then
Of the circus. Yeah.
And then at the same time that we agree, which I think is pretty obvious from this, we need to rethink this entire thing.
Yes.
And so I want to get Phyllis set up for the next cycle, but we stumble on this every time it comes up.
Yeah.
And it's clearly not efficient, all the words we looked at this morning. It's just, I think that's what I would say. So I would be willing to accept this revision, and with the understanding that we're not done with this. But we need to get something to Phyllis, and if now, because of what Josh has made as a recommendation, we are concerned about not abiding by that recommendation for legal purposes, that's where I would take it. But I'd love to hear public comment on it.
Yeah.
Under public comment, I wasn't aware that the sponsorship process had this many pain points. And I didn't understand that those amounts were held to an airport public purpose standard as well. I thought that was probably just a de minimis amount for goodwill in the community, so.
So now you're getting into the gray, and that's
Okay,
right.
yeah.
If it's less than $1,000, then maybe it's de minimis, and there's part of the goodwill of just operating an airport. And, but if you start talking about 50,000, then you start getting into
And
a
that's
little
why
bit
we
tighter
have the
strict.
agency partnership.
But we're talking
Right,
less
but-
than 5,000.
Less than 5, yeah.
Yeah.
So is that
So-
de minimis?
Take it back to 3?
Jeez.
I know, I did not know that sponsorships were held to an airport public purpose. I
They are,
honestly didn't.
but Phyllis, to your point, yeah, that at some of the dollar figures we're talking about there, it becomes almost where goodwill, which normally by itself isn't an airport purpose, may justify it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Is there a threshold, Josh?
I am not trying to there isn't.
Okay.
I mean, this is all that, case by case, super gray.
Yeah.
You got to look at it on the facts each time.
Okay, fair enough. All right, is there any other public comment on Zoom or Tom Meadows?
Thank you, Madam President. I am shocked, simply shocked that to find out that the district is in a funding crisis. Whoa. That was one of the comments when this whole thing started out on this thing. Funding crisis. Well, if you're in a funding crisis, why are you gonna give over $100,000 to a cross-country ski education program? It makes no sense to me. Now, they only used over $1,000, but they got $150,000 sitting in the bank, quote, to get, which had nothing to do with aviation. The $3,000 little outlays that turned into the $5,000 outlays, and that program has worked for the last 34 years that I know of. And right now, you got a policy giving management $100,000, and management can manage it. Gee whiz, you guys don't have to see it. Let management manage. When this dollar for dollar deal, I think that's absolutely necessary, because if some other district or agency wants money, let them get some skin in the game and put up the bucks that they want the airport to put up the bucks. Big Brothers Big Sisters headquarters is in Incline Village, as far as I understand. A big brother has told me that it's not in Truckee. It used to be in Kings Beach, and now the headquarters is in Incline Village. And just reiterate my own opinion on large chunks of money going out. I think everybody that comes asking for a large chunk of money ought to get $5,000 and say, have a nice day. Thank you. How much, what does the airport get from giving almost $1 million on a piston bully? Wow, they got to use it over here making ramps of snow. I don't know what else that was. Does the airport get a lot of PR? Does it help mitigate noise? No, I don't think it does much of anything. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks, Tom. Anybody else for public comment? Anybody on Zoom? I don't see any hands raised. Okay. You're up.
Do I have to? I am once again going to make an uncomfortable motion. I move to approve the edited changes and format updated policy 311, community sponsorships and partnerships as recommended by staff, legal, and the Community Foundation presented in this report. And I'm not recommending any changes whatsoever.
Not even the forest or land management. Can you modify that to include those two?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that fits under the greenhouse gas emissions reductions and offsets. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Heatherington,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens,
Yes.
Director Odette's absent, motion carries.
And we may be touching it again.
I imagine we will. It's a work in progress. Okay, item number 7, runway feasibility study update and additional analysis. I spoke with Rob about this. I'm happy to discuss it, but I feel like we need 5 board members to make decisions. And I don't feel comfortable with only 4 of us making these decisions on the options.
Why is that? You can't have 3 votes among 4?
I feel like this is something that we've been working towards for a really long time. It makes me uncomfortable. You may differ in opinion.
I'm listening, and I comprehend what you just said.
Okay. How do you guys feel about it?
Well, I would like to proceed with some of the modeling. I would like a summer model of existing conditions and then see the peak season using the new updated forecast model. I want to compare using their model, what it is now, with the forecast they have, looking at just summertime. Is it going to make a difference? Because that will shape my decision on a go, no-go. And to me, that's where I'm at. I would like to authorize proceeding. I don't know that we need to do them all. I asked for this pricing. I'm curious to see what other people say. But I think we need to have summer, because again, we didn't even need snow removal this last season if you average it out over a whole year. So when you do a noise above and you average it over a whole year, it loses meaning. And I'm really interested in this peak season summer and using the forecast model with the peak season, because that is our window where we get most of, over probably 60% of our traffic, and that's the effect.
You're suggesting number 1?
It's doing the peak season 1, which is existing conditions, and then 3, the annual forecast. I'm assuming that's the forecast model, the forecast with the peak season. I would like to see both those, and those can't be done simultaneous to what they were saying. They're done, so that's 14 weeks out. That's 3 months, and that's a bummer, but this goes back to you and I talking at the very beginning, and I have those minutes where we said, we want to know what happens in the summer.
I would, since we've already started the discussion, thanks, Mary.
Director Diamond, if I could just point out too, we have Brad from Mead and Hunt dialed in as well, so we have him
Yeah, I
online
was trying
for
to get
questions,
it.
just for
Your
context.
feeling of how we want this to go. We
I
definitely
would
want
like
hear
to
from
have the discussion about it. I have questions that I wanted to ask about it, and then maybe after the discussion, if we feel like we're not comfortable making that
Okay.
decision, that we can continue it. But I would like to have the discussion because we might come up with something that actually feels okay.
Okay. All right, so Brad, are you with us?
Yeah, good evening.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, we can't see you.
Oh, would you like to see me?
Yes, we would, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Hi.
Oh, there you are, great. Okay, do you have a presentation for us or comments on the?
No, and maybe I just wanted to let the board know that he's online if we have any detailed questions, but we didn't ask Brad to make a presentation.
Oh, okay.
I can frame it a little bit.
Yeah.
From discussions with some of the board members, Rob and Brad, what we put in the board report is to really neck down and extensive conversations with Mead and Hunt that going forward, we need to make, or Mead and Hunt strongly recommends that we, at some point.
Should we wait? I mean, he's part of this, and we've lost Teresa, so.
Do we need a break?
Yeah.
Correct.
Just a short break? Yeah, okay.
Walking over here to say thank you
To walk.
Phyllis and get a cookie.
Okay.
Thank you, Phyllis.
All right. Going forward at some point to take a clear position with a clearly stated position, and we're from the draft feasibility study, we're into a category most likely of 2, potentially 3, which is do nothing. But of either do we go down the road of a 1634, which there's a lot of decisions, and the only way the FAA will look at it is if we complete a complete study. And in the board report, there's 5 items. They'll do the analysis if we produce all that information. Or if we are looking at runway 0220, a lengthening, widening, it's already in the ALP. We can go down the road of a master plan update. And so I think in reference to Director Harrington's conversation about the proceeding with the noise study, and it's clearly up to the board. If we go down to 0220, and if that's the decision right now, then we don't need to spend the funds on additional noise study. And now if the noise study is critical to making that wide the road decision, then the noise study would be appropriate. But we wanted to just lay that out, that if the board is at a 0220 right now, without the noise study, you can go do that. If you're still contemplating 1634, Mead and Hunt's recommendation is we do at least one noise study. The FAA will want somewhere between a 5 to 10 year forecast, which we currently don't have. So we have to do that anyways. So we're at a juncture of fiscal spending of whether we do the noise study or not, depending on where the board is at. And that's what we're trying to tee up for the board this evening. Not realizing that we don't have all 5 board members.
You just said we don't have that 5 to 10 year forecast. Mead and Hunt did develop a forecast. They did 5 different models, and we
Correct.
took the regression. So we do have a model. We do have forecasts 5 year to 10, actually a 20.
Right. Brad, why don't you speak to the details of that?
Yeah, sure, happy to. What we don't have right now is a noise analysis for any forecast year. And speaking to Gene with HMMH, most of these alternatives analysis, the FAA will like to see some forecast year, typically 5 or 10 years out of not only the number above analysis like we did for the base year, but also your CNEL contours as well. Mm-hmm. So I guess the point being is if you were to move ahead with 1634 and submit that to the FAA, at a minimum, we would recommend producing one of the future years noise analysis. Now that would be for the average day, like we did for the draft study. We also discussed the seasonal analysis, the summertime analysis, and while I do understand that would be valuable for the district in making your decision, it would likely not impact anything that the FAA is evaluating. It would, any seasonal analysis is pretty much going to be done for the benefit of the district in helping you make that decision. The FAA will likely not even care so much about that as they will the forecast.
Why would we have to do the noise? I didn't think the FAA cared.
They went senile.
It'll help make a decision. Well, one, it will help them make a decision. I think that, the primary goals of the study is to reduce noise and overflight. And without there being a CNEL 65 issue from operations, we're putting a lot of stake in the NA 70. So having a comparison for base year and some year in the future on that NA 70 is just strengthening your case that you are reducing noise and you're reducing overflight and you're reducing impacts. But also, if the next step that would likely take place here is your NEPA environmental document, and that noise analysis that would be done for this study could be used in that environmental document. So it's helping the FAA visualize what will need to be done with that NEPA document. So there's two benefits of doing that, running a forecast noise model.
Yeah, so I've got some thoughts on this. One is a simple question. At what point do we commit to this? Like, if we decide that we want to move forward with seeing what the FAA says about this, can we do that without making a commitment to actually build a runway or extend or whatever we're going to do?
I think my understanding is if the board makes a decision they want to move forward with any of the options, then the board needs to formalize that in an application to the FAA.
But is that a commitment that if they say, yes, we'll build a runway? Or are we just saying, we want you to tell us where you stand on this?
Brad, I'd welcome your feedback on this, but the FAA is not necessarily going to give you, they're looking for the district to have an opinion on what you want to do as a plan for the future. And that's what they're going to evaluate and make a decision on and provide us feedback on. I don't know that they necessarily will just, look at it and provide an opinion just kind of casually waiting for you to make another decision. Brad, is that?
Yeah, I'll say that, and just because something is on your ALP
Where is it?
does not commit the district to building it. It gives you, it's definitely a big step towards that, and I think if it's on the ALP, it's giving you that FAA acceptance. And my thought was over the past 12 months is what the district was after with this study was acceptance or not acceptance from the FAA. But it doesn't commit you to building.
Okay, so the reason that I asked this is because in trying to distill this down, because this is probably the biggest decision this board or any board in recent memory would have made here. Mm-hmm. We were asked to figure out a way to move traffic away from town. I'm abstracting that, but that was basically what we were asked to do in a petition. And then we set forth to answer the question of whether this option was feasible. I would still like to get a final answer for that, for either for this board or for future boards to know if it's ever worth opening up again. Because if the FAA says it's never going to happen, we've got our answer. And if the FAA says it could happen, then we have a decision to make at that point. One of the things that is in the analysis that I can't let go of is the concept that we might be able to impact the goal or to address the goal by addressing pilot choices and pilot behavior, the choice of runway when they're departing. This ties into, or most likely ties in also with tower operations. It's difficult for me to think about that runway, a massive project like that we're not entirely sure is going to solve any problems, if we know we've got this really small, affordable, low-hanging fruit, which is, can we make a coordinated attempt to really outreach to our aviators to make them understand what we're up against here, what we're trying to solve, and to see on the many, many calm wind days that we've got, if we can affect that behavior. If we do that successfully, and we look at what Brad and his team have created, the tables that show that a certain percentage of traffic has moved from 29 into one of the other runways, I'm wondering how close to those numbers we could get without modifying any cement or any asphalt at all. And I know that we can't do this all in sequence because we're all gonna be all old and dead by the time it gets there. So what I wonder is if we could move forward with the next step with the FAA on 1634, and at the same time add the analysis that about the seasonal analysis, because I think that is valid, and defer a decision with regard to the expenditure of money and breaking ground and doing that sort of thing until a period of time has passed that gives staff the opportunity to campaign, to figure out how to contact pilots, how to do this, to give us a few quarters to be able to measure results on that. And I think we have to defer that until after the completion of 020, because when that's being constructed, everybody's going to be using this surface here, 1129. So that's going to negatively skew our numbers horrendously. It's going to look really, really bad. So we have to get past that before we start making any judgments about that. Coming from my background in marketing, I'm a believer in the motivation aspect of things, that if we make people aware of what's going on here, that we could affect change. I've spoken with a number of pilots here. I mean, I'm a pilot here as well, but who admit that the reason that they took off on 29 is because the one before them took off on 29, so they didn't question it. They just got into position and took off on 29. And I think that this is an educational thing. If we could do that, we could immediately affect change and an improvement for the folks out here in the noise zones. We might be able to achieve our goal and approach the numbers that are in that table without actually having to go down the road of constructing a runway or lengthening and widening a runway or doing anything of that extensive expense and disruption. That's all I've got on it.
So if we followed that that idea, we're doing reconstruction 220 this year. You're really getting the data. If you agreed to implement this, the Diamond Plan is summer of 24.
Most likely, yeah. And I think that gives us an opportunity
the vote will be after I'm off the board.
And we might have heard back from the FAA at that point in time.
Yeah, because as you all know, I am a person who has advocated not doing 1634 and doing 220 widening and extending. But it seems to me that if we are going to get the FAA to take it seriously, we have to submit 1634, even though I'm opposed to it.
I agree. And I think even if we think of the 1634 option or the lengthening and widening option, both of these options are dependent on pilots choosing to use those runways. And right now, we don't see evidence of pilots choosing runways beyond 29 most of the time, even in calm wind conditions. We've got data that supports that. That's why I feel like our first step here is a real focused, concerted effort at solving that with the surfaces we have now. And then at that point in time, we might be able to decide if there's additional benefit to be derived from actually constructing something.
I'm looking at Brad and at Rick, when you and I were on the ad hoc, and Ryan Hayes, your meat and hunt guy, who was saying that we were going down a path of we could submit this to the FAA as is to get a maybe or absolutely not decision. But what I'm seeing in this report is that we have to do 5 other things before we submit, whereas Ryan and you were very clear that this report would get us to that point where we could submit. And I'm just confused.
I think, yeah, that's true. We probably could submit as is. And again, the only additional analysis that, after speaking with Gene and thinking about taking this to the next step and what it is we're actually asking the FAA for, is that one run of noise analysis based off of a future year, 5 years or 10 years. That's something that we didn't know at the time. I think that because the FAA has not been involved in this, and when we did reach out to the ADO about this, it's been rather blurry on what it is that they want to see. When Kevin was there and he tried proposing this with the ADO, it was, no, put it on an ALP and send it to the IA. The ADO didn't want to touch it. So I think we're 95% of the way there. I wouldn't argue with the board if you did want to submit it as is. I think that is what we scoped and that's what we originally thought, but again, talking to Gene and maybe having all of our ducks in a row for this, we thought that having at least a future noise run could potentially help your case for getting 1634 accepted.
Are you remembering it like I'm remembering it, Rick? In terms of Ryan Hayes saying to go through this preliminary report would be something that we could submit to get a go, no go, or a maybe, absolutely not?
No, I don't remember. And I don't take as good a notes as you do.
And creating an ALP is not part of your scope now, and there are significant sheets associated with it, so excessive more costs.
Actually, the ALP update was a part of our original scope, and again, this has evolved. I actually talked to Ryan Hayes about what our next steps are in this, and some other people in Mead and Hunt. We would submit your draft ALP, and that would be the core sheet, which is your main sheet that shows the airport, and then your data sheet, before we would even move ahead with any of the airspace analysis. Those core sheets were part of your scope.
So we would have the sheet, the main sheet of the ALP. We would have a CNL of 5 years from now, because you've done the forecast. You would have the report that you've put together, which Ryan had said would be enough to get us to a maybe, absolutely not decision point. Maybe.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And we would submit your forecast. It would be
a third of a package.
No, I think it would be a master, because we've done a lot of the work we did with the forecast and the inventory were done as part of the ALP update in 20 and 21, and then we shifted into this study for the runway, but all that information can be used and packaged with the airside facility requirements and this alternatives analysis for the runway as a package, put it on the ADO's desk with your noise analysis and with your draft ALP, the two sheets that we would update and say, here you go. And it's a lot of information, but I think that the case is there, and we would get some sort of response from the FAA. And I think I talked to Rob and Jeff about this. We would want to have a very clear transmittal letter, cover letter that says, this is what we've done, and this is what we're asking for. And that's going to be really key to what the FAA is going to help you with, is what is that next step? What does the FAA want from us, from you, and what can we provide them to make that next step, which is going to be acceptance of 1634 on your ALP and then moving into the environmental document. And I just want to state that that's really only what's required for alternative 1. If alternative 2 is selected or alternative 5, as Director Diamond has already mentioned, there's no need to make those steps with the FAA at this time.
So if we submit this report with an updated ALP, no noise thing to the FAA, and we get a absolutely not, then we're at alternative 5 or alternative 2. And we're at the existing ALP, not the new ALP. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay. And we may only get a maybe from them.
I think, and again, we're trying to anticipate what the FAA is going to say about this, but because they've let, this has been a district funded, it hasn't been a FAA funded, we're kind of shut out at the door until we have as much evidence as possible to hand them.
Okay. So to get that updated ALP and that CNEL study, because they don't recognize noise above, is that included in the scope?
The ALP, yes, at least updating those core 2 sheets and bundling the package and making that first contact with the FAA is in your original contract.
And that gives us the go, no-go. And simultaneous to that, we could be running these models for summer use, which would inform us, is this really going to make a difference or not? Simultaneous to that, so we're running 3 tracks. Simultaneous to this, we've got staff really trying to, although this next year is going to be a bust with 220 under construction, of trying to get more usage on 220 as is. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Makes sense to you. I'm
Makes sense
over
to
here.
me.
I'm getting a lot of blank eyes over here. Does that make sense to you? There's like 3 rails going.
Okay.
Okay. First rail is as we were promised that. As we were promised at the beginning, this report would be adequate to submit to the FAA to say, absolutely not, or yeah, we'll consider it. So let's proceed as if. And if they come back with an absolutely not, then we know that 1634 is off the table and we're faced with alternative 2 or alternative 5. Simultaneous on a second rail is doing the noise for summer peak season, because that's when our traffic is, and doing it for now versus in 10, 15 years. We have to pick when we want to compare that to see if it makes a difference for real in the summer, because winter, everybody's inside. A third rail is trying to really reach out and educate and get more usage of 220. So they can all be happening simultaneously, but we're not making a hard decision of 1 or 2 or 5 right now. We're proceeding on different rails. Is that?
Except that the noise study is going to have to be done a year from now. So it's not really simultaneous.
The noise study would take 14 weeks.
Right, but if the noise, if the construction out here during the summer is going to really skew.
It's the data for the noise above data is based on July 1, 20 through June 30th, 21. We've got that data.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you would do that analysis for that summer, which would be just the 20 data.
Okay.
June 30, pick that data. It would actually roll over. You'd pick a piece of 21 up for June and then do that data.
Compare it to the forecast.
And you compare the forecast out at 25 years, 10 years. What time frame do we want to compare that to?
Okay.
Yeah, what we couldn't do until after reconstruction was measure the number differences, usage difference.
Right.
Because our numbers are gonna go to hell when that runway is shut down, because everybody has to use this runway.
But in this intervening year, staff can be working on this education program and outreach and figure out how we're going to innovate, be bold, be leaders. Courage. So what do you, I mean, that makes sense to me. I liked your idea of let's put it in, and if they say absolutely not, then we went through this process so we can talk to the community, because this has been on the books since 13. Will it make a difference? And if the FAA says absolutely not, you can't do it, well, and the noise study, and who knows how long the FAA will take with it. They could take 14 weeks. And if we go through and find out that the models show it's not going to make that much difference, and the FAA says, yeah, you can go ahead and do it, well, why would we do it? But you've at least answered the community's concern to say, we looked at it legitimately, we just didn't take it off the table.
Right.
I like it. That's a good point.
I don't like leaving things unfinished, and we're so far down this road. And like Rick, I've been very dubious about the 1634. However, I think we should see it through to completion. But I also like option 5. And, you know, we've got new staff, we've got new ideas, we're going to be bold.
Right. I think actually this way we're not taking anything off the table, and we're not stopping anything.
Right.
We're just not committing that we're definitely going to do this. We just kind of want to see the next step. And then in
Correct.
the meantime, we're collecting multiple data points, which are important for that final decision.
Okay.
And we give a chance to move traffic to 220, which we're going to do amazingly well next summer by closing 220.
Right.
No, I said the opposite.
Yeah.
So does that seem, does it make sense?
The tracks I hear you talking about make sense. Those are viable approaches to this, absolutely. Yeah. David's comments as well, right?
It makes sense to me. It does. For the outreach, if we were to make a full court press, my only concern is with if we end up doing the runway construction this summer, how that fits in. If it is punted, we used to have a pilot outreach coordinator. Just looking at if we're really, really serious about this, we need to look hard at that position and likely onboarding someone to lead that education effort. But I don't want to get in for the headlights. There's more to it, and I think a lot of it's baked into what the priorities are of the strategic plan.
And I think honestly, the closure of 220 is an opportunity here, because all pilots are going to notice that. They're all going to look into that. They're going to want to know how long it's going to take. And in that communication, we can explain that and say, and by the way, when it's done, here's where we're hoping we go.
It's going to be great pavement.
So it could be, I mean, it's a good entry point for that discussion, because you're going to have everybody paying attention.
So in terms of, they have to do CNAL, and that's where you take a whole year's worth of data and you make, you know, everything is compiled into one aircraft, and then you get a graph, you know, a line that shows 55, 65, 75. And then, but what we are saying, what we want in terms of these scenario models, I would propose this peak season summer, which will be June, July, August, and half of September, from from Memorial Day through half of September. Does everybody agree that's our peak season? And then we don't need the annual forecast, but we want the forecasted summer period with the peak. You know, number 3, you say annual forecast. the annual doesn't mean anything. I want to know summer peak season with the forecasted data that we approved earlier. Does that make? I'm looking at you, Brad. Is that clear?
That makes sense, but I would just reiterate that the FAA will likely want to see that annual forecast data.
They'll want CNL. They don't care about noise above. The model that you're running are noise above, number above.
It's still going to require
The CNL is
Data.
annual.
the CNEL for your future scenario, whatever year, 5 or 10, and I'd like to talk to Gene a little more about that. The data input is the cost. Hitting the button to spit out whether it's CNEL or number above, I don't believe it's a big difference. And my point earlier was that we now think that the FAA, since we have this baseline data showing number above today, they will likely also want to see that same analysis for your future year.
Okay. The FAA works off of CNEL, correct?
Correct.
So, and that's part of the scope already defined.
Correct.
And that's an annual number, and that's what would be submitted with this report. And
We
so-
have your 2021, or the base year data, CNEL.
Right.
It was in one of the appendices.
And that will go with the ALP and this report.
Right.
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 For us, the decision point becomes number above, not the CNEL. It's I've been studying noise, the decibels, the averaging for a long time. It doesn't tell me real decision points. Having a number above during the peak season now versus 15 years from now gives me something I have a decision point on. And we don't even have to submit that to the FAA. That's something for us to make the decision from.
I
And
understand, but all of our analysis in the study used number above, and that's what we're making the case to the FAA that look at how, we know that CNEL is not an issue here. However, look at how the number above, using the number above analysis, reduces impact on residents. It shows that we're therefore reducing overflight. So the backbone of our argument is using that NA70 metric for the FAA.
so are you saying we have to do 1, 2, and 3?
No, I'm not. We recommend at least running a future year analysis though.
That's
to
not,
help. And we believe that the FAA will probably come back and ask for one of those for a future year analysis.
I guess what I'm getting at is I have to make a motion to spend money for these additional models. And what I need to make a decision is peak season now, this year, for that year, 2021, and 15 years out, 20 years out, help me.
And I think that we can come back to you with a recommended year,
Okay,
but our recommendation as a team is to not run the summer. I understand that that's going to help you,
yeah.
but it's not going to help the FAA, and it's not going to help justify 1634. A future year would. An annual analysis, not a seasonal.
Yeah, so what you're saying, Brad, is that the seasonal analysis would be for our own information, and the future
Correct.
year analysis is what you recommend for the FAA submission.
Correct.
The future year one that you're saying is number 2.
Correct.
Right. And what I'm wanting is 1 and 3. So that's why I asked, do we need to run all 3 of them?
All I'm recommending is number 2.
Yeah. Yes.
For what I think the FAA will want to see.
And when would this be ready to submit to the FAA?
if we were to just run 2, because I'm hearing you want to do 1 and 3, and if we could expedite scenario 2 and include that in our package, or would you like us to just submit the package as is?
If you were to include number 2 in your submission,
Yeah, I
which
would.
would take seven weeks.
The noise would be the critical path, because everything else we have pretty much ready to go. And updating the ALP would not take as long as it would for the noise. So I'd want to confirm with Gene, because they have other items as well, and I'd hate to commit to a timeline from tonight to that period, but it would be at least 2 months.
Which is the 7 weeks. What I'm curious is packaging it to submit it, and we know that they're going to ask for it, so that you could start running it, and then when they ask for it, oh, okay, here it is.
I'd also like to warn the board that there's unknowns they're going to ask for. Because this is an unconventional study, and we have not had, they're going to say, this is great. Now do this and that and this. There's a possibility. I'm not.
Understand?
And I don't know what that's going to be. But Dr. Harlington, that is a good point. We could potentially submit and then add an appendix to it with the future noise analysis.
Because,
that they
right,
see.
because it gives them something to ask for, that it's like, oh, it's already coming,
Knowing how busy the ADO is too, that by the time we
It gets in line.
complete the next noise analysis in 2 months, it'll give us another chance to communicate with them.
Right. So there's an advantage to going ahead to package it up and submit it. Then simultaneous, you'll start working this annual
Right.
forecast. Then, and they won't get to it for 2 months, 3 months anyway. I mean, we won't get an answer back, right? I mean, just understand, in all likelihood.
I'm not going to assume it
Yeah.
ain't the ADO.
Right.
We'll
It
do
could
our
be
best
6
to-
months. It could be 6 months or 9.
Yeah,
So-
we'll do our best to, and I'll work with Rob and Jeff to stay, to.
So proceeding
Yeah.
with number 2, and then I anticipate wanting 1 and 3, but they could be done afterward to inform us.
Correct.
I don't want to wait till, well, maybe I do want to wait till the FAA comes back with a maybe, instead of spending $76,000. If they come back with a absolutely not, then we've spent a lot of money. I would like, get it in, get it packaged, and then simultaneously doing the annual forecast, anticipating that they will ask for it. So, I'm trying to get clear about how that's working. And in terms of as a motion, if I want to put the other 76,000 in the budget, to have it ready to go, I kind of do. So I'm going to make that motion. Oh, yeah. Anybody else? Oh, Rob? Sorry?
I don't know if there's other public comment.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any public comment?
Thank you, Madam President. Some of you may remember the name Bob Cooey, my friend, who said, a job not worth doing is a job not worth doing well. This is this just keeps going down the road with, and now we've got another study to do. How many more studies are going to be needed to be done, especially in the middle of a funding crisis, which I just heard about this evening? How much money has been spent on this? How many hours, man hours, woman hours, people hours? I think you ought to just wipe thing off the table, throw it in the trash can. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Anybody on Zoom with public comment? Okay.
I'll make a motion to we're not choosing any alternative. I'll make a motion to put 3 times 38,000 what is that, 100 and something, to staff to have alternative, the annual forecast model done, and to have it funded if we do want to proceed with the other two.
Why don't we, can I make a suggestion? Why don't we just go ahead with number 2, because that's very clear.
With number 2. Just make the
And-
motion for number 2 to fund 38,000.
Yeah. And then
Right.
maybe for the rest of the funding, we'll have a full board next month? 'Cause we wouldn't be spending that in the month anyway, right?
That's true. But to keep in mind that the peak season is the decision point for this board member
Okay.
analysis. So I'll make a motion to approve the 38,000.
Just that? After all we just talked about?
I would like to do the 3 times, but she's not in it, so what do you say? Oh, all the other aspects?
stuff?
Well, that's another motion, isn't it? Or to include in this motion that we submit to the FAA as is with this, to submit to the FAA now and to be working on the annual forecast as it will be coming in. Yeah.
Can I?
Yes, you can amend it.
Okay. I move to submit the runway analysis for alternative 1 to the FAA with the annual forecast add-on study and continue a decision on runway alternative selection for a period of 14 months, during which time the district will create, deploy, and measure outreach campaigns intended to modify runway selection by pilots.
He's a writer.
Second.
Nicely done.
Roll call.
I defer, yes.
I just took notes to listen to the recording.
Could I ask one point of clarification to Director Diamond? In there's 4 and 5 for arrivals and departures. Do you are interested in pursuing that, or just the 38,000 for annual forecast?
Just the annual, sorry. Just the annual forecast, and then I think we can make a decision on the other 2 when we have more information on where we're at with this.
Thanks, sir.
Director Diamond.
Yes.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
Director Rolfe.
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Director Odette's absent. Motion carries.
Does anybody need a break?
I need such a break.
think we
I'm
should
gonna
take a
leave
break.
the meeting.
And
Good night.
allow Rick to get home. All right, is everybody ready? Lost Rick.
Forced housing.
Boy, Rick stuck it out. It was almost 10 hours he was here. That's a long time for, I know, but not all of us are recovering.
We don't need to really spend time on that. You told me why this is. I don't like it, but I guess I have to live with it.
Okay, where are we? Oh, we've done, okay, number 8. All right, board committee assignments and ad hoc committee reports. Do we have Emily? Does Emily
We
have?
do.
Oh, hi, Emily.
Hey,
So we read the materials that you sent us. Do you have a presentation, or do you want to take questions?
I do not have a presentation. Happy to take questions or talk you through the information that Lauren included in your board packet.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Emily?
I just had that question, and this is more for anybody public who's tuning in, that, you know, the way you've structured this with operations fee, you know, our contribution is going from 5347 to 19,000. It's a quadrupling, whereas
Yep.
other agencies who employ a lot more people, like the hospital and the school district, are actually decreasing. And it kind of bothered me to see that, because we have 25, 30 staff, and they have hundreds of staff. And, yeah.
So I understand that, and I would say that the model that we have proposed to the board that was passed unanimously is the model that maybe we should have considered at the beginning, right? So we're 3 years into this, we're still evolving. And in 2022, we started to kind of assess staff and operational capacity and activities, and recognize that a lot of our services are actually working towards serving the whole, not the specific employees of each of our member agencies. That also played into this new structure that I presented to you all in December, that really has us looking outside of just our member agency employees and looking at the bigger community. So all of this kind of came together and had us thinking about our organizational and operational structure, and that led us to recognize that the member fee structure that we've been looking at maybe wasn't as equal as it should have been as it relates to all the operational activities that we are managing on a daily basis that serve everybody, that serve the greater good as a whole, all 7 member agencies. And so we looked at our budget and actually took 25% of those operational activities, such as all of our finance and accounting activities, and assess them across the foundation of the annual budget. So all 7 member agencies pay an equal foundational fee that recognizes your support of the operational activities of this organization. And then 75% is still being assessed based on the employee count. So of our $430,000 budget, the hospital is still paying $200,000. The school district is still paying $100,000. So I recognize, the airport's fee has increased to really recognize your support of the organization and our operational structure, but we still are really looking at 75% being tied to those employee count fees, even with this new structure of evolving to serve a greater community.
Great, thank you.
Did you have any questions, David?
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you, Emily.
Yes, of course, thanks. Good to see you all.
Yeah, you too. Okay. Climate transformation. Anybody have any questions about the CTA? We had that report. ACT attendance. David, were you on the last ACT? I thought I saw. I attended that one.
Well, actually, I was, and then it got rescheduled, but then didn't get rescheduled. I was on the version that was supposed to be rescheduled but didn't get rescheduled.
So that was the previous month.
That was, yeah,
But I missed the
that
last
was February. Okay.
I know you were on last month.
I was on, yeah. Yeah, it was good. Does anybody want to volunteer to be?
What is this one going to be?
So next month, I'm looking to talk about the winter weather impacts on our facilities here and talk through that, particularly our hangar rows, but also what's involved in our plowing operations for runways and taxiways and through the hangar rows as well, and also talk about the snow loads and impact on our hangars to make sure everybody's aware of current status of things. So taking volunteers.
I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
What day is that? Is that the 12th?
April 12th,
Okay.
1800.
Yeah, I can do that too.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. General Manager's report. Is there any highlight or any questions for Rob?
Yeah, actually, then this is based on some, Rob and I did have a discussion about this, and now we're down to like a minimum board, and I was kind of hoping all 5 of us would be here for this. But, and it was related to the snow situation, the winter impacts that we've got. We have a finite crew. We can't address everything at once. And I just wonder if we, from a policy level, might want to prioritize asset protection over service availability.
Didn't you do that to some extent?
Yeah, we did, and David and I had a great conversation about this, and I took the obvious concern about, what are we prioritizing here? And part of the way the storm cycle rolled out this last time, when we received a significant snow load on our hangars and started seeing some degradation of roof structures, not collapse, not total failures, but enough that we did close several hangars and did move aircraft out and did involve staff in a concerted effort to move snow off the top of the hangars and reduce the snow loads. But while we were doing that, we closed services for the airfield. And it was a period of time where actually we had runways available, but we didn't have any services available for about 3 or 4 days because we prioritized moving snow off of hangar roofs in order for asset protection, facility protection. So we were losing those to further damage or total collapse. So whether that needs to be a policy level or something that we're looking at and talking about as part of the strategic plan, a guiding principle, I think that would be a welcome conversation to get the sense of the board about what we prioritize. Certainly we're making operational decisions on a regular basis here based on conditions and prioritizing necessary things so we do not lose assets or facilities just to provide services.
Right.
Yeah, my concern about, as I mentioned to Rob, is a few years ago when we had a big snow, we got some criticism from hangar tenants that we were not clearing taxiways and runways fast enough after a snow event. And it was not because staff was sitting around doing nothing. So I felt like there was a misunderstanding about that with regard to prioritization, and I wanted to figure out a way that we could abstract staff from any criticisms that they would have from tenants to be able to defer to. We are following policy, and our policy says this before that.
Infrastructure.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And there's some things we're going to look at to put in place to have on-call contracts to assist us if we have an appropriate budget, what that might look like to assist us from a contract perspective and move snow off hangars. We have contracts for some areas of parking lots for folks to move the snow there. So we are using some of those resources. It's just we don't have those contracts in place right now for roofs, for example, for hangar roofs. And that's something we could have in place in the future. We could have different measurements or criteria that are triggered based on a different inspection regime of facilities to make sure snow loads are not tipping a certain level we're comfortable with during the winter. That we start shifting priorities, or we trigger a contract, or start moving snow off. I think there's a lot of things we can do to facilitate operating and protection facilities. But in some extreme cases, it would be good to have clear guidance for the board about what we should be doing and prioritizing.
But you'd like to do that through the strategic planning?
I think there's opportunities to add some elements in there to do that. I think that would be the perfect location for it.
Fair enough, thanks.
Great.
And then annual budget to address appropriately for emergency conditions contracts, right?
That's it.
Okay, any more questions for Rob? Go ahead.
On the AvCom Community Services Report, I see your new format. What was interesting was I was talking to somebody the other day who was saying, golly, I'm getting a lot of flights in the middle of the night. And I went back and looked, and we had voluntary curfew operations, but we didn't, I'm not sure we've been capturing any night flight, or was it just the people who have signed up for. So this is the old table that showed arrivals and departures at middle of the night. And that's gone away here, and I'm not sure I want it to go away. But I also am not sure I just want it for people who are voluntary curfew questions. I want to know how many operations we're getting at these 11 p.m., 12 p.m., 1 a.m. periods. If that's something that is possible to collect and provide, not just the voluntary curfew ones, but everybody. Because it's a person who's under the downwind approach, and he was like, I hear him at 2 in the morning, I hear him at 3 in the morning. I don't experience that. I experience some departures, but he was very clear that that was true, and so I'm making that request to somehow continue to collect that.
Let me make sure I understand. So the way I read the report and talking to David Van Quest, there was 7 quote-unquote curfew violations, 4 of which were helicopters, 3 fixed wing this month. Is that answering your question?
There were 7 operations between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Were they related to base tenants? So they
okay.
Or
so of the
total of 7.
Of the 3 fixed wing violators, were they fly quiet, home based? Who were they?
I just want to know how many are happening in that period, because the previous reports only talked about people who were signed up in the voluntary programs, not.
Yeah, this is all of
that's total of 7.
That's total. There were only 7
Okay.
last month between the hours of 10 and 7. So I can clarify, but from talking to David Van Quest,
Okay.
it was 7, 4
7.
helicopters,
Okay.
care flight. I don't have the specifics on the 3 fixed wing. Easy enough to get.
See, and I mean,
But I just want to make sure I really
It's
understand.
on the,
Yeah, DBQ, anything to add? Are you on?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I want to say that the 3 fixed wing were all hangar attendants flying within their flight quiet agreement. So within either 30 minutes or an hour, they stopped what they were sent for.
so they are tenants, and I guess what I'm trying to get at is, are we capturing transient in this time frame as well?
Yeah, the number we're reporting is all aircraft between 10 p.m. and 7.
Okay. So, okay. That's what the clarity of that, because it's, in the past, it was just voluntary curfew. And I didn't know if that captured
it's
other
everybody.
people, the transients.
So now you're getting all of them, not just the ones participating in flight quiet.
And what, the runway utilization survey system that we've got, doesn't that capture time of day? Like, I'm wondering from that, could we derive quarterly information on what time of day particular traffic happened?
Yeah, we did. We used to.
Oh, yeah, we have more detailed analysis on.
Right,
all
okay.
these, right, yeah.
And that's, I think, of value to us to know, in 2022, we had 2 operations at 1 a.m. But in 2021, we had 4 arrivals and 1 departure at 12 a.m., 1 departure at 4 a.m., 7 at 5 a.m. So it's kind of, that's a metric that I'd like to sort of keep an eye on. Are we getting more at night in that period? And
Yeah, I think
including transient as
right.
well as local. And
Yeah, I think-
because of the vector, we should be able to have that.
Yeah, I think as next month we're doing a winter season roll-up, and I think that's kind of reporting iteration. Maybe we could dive a little deeper on some of these things and talk about trends.
And again, I'm just bringing it up because we just group all jets together, and again, it's small, medium, large, or, which I know you're massaging and fixing, but, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other highlights from aviation and community services?
Financial, yeah. Kelly, any further comments?
Finance and administration report.
Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Kelly? Any highlights?
I don't. I just want to say again, which I said last time, the new format of these reports is just ridiculously improved.
Sweet.
So thank you for that.
I'm glad you like it. I did want to put out just kind of high level after everything that went down a couple weeks ago with Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, that I've reached out to Wells Fargo, CalPERS, LAIF, all of our kind of banking institutions, and I'm putting together a document that I can share with you guys on a quarterly basis, and also I'll do it at next month's meeting. But everything that I've been given, we're in a safe spot where everything is doing okay.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for doing that. Okay. Is there any public comment on these managers for team reports? No? Okay. All right. Future agenda priorities and meeting management. We've all read that. Were there any conferences this month? No. Okay.
I would like to attend the noise and emissions in Davis, May 1st through 3rd. And wondering, if anybody else is interested, and or, with Jeff or Rob going, because that is a big issue. And for one of you to consider going as well.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at that for staff attendance, and absolutely, yeah, it'd be great if you go, right?
So do I just set it up and then talk to Lauren?
Yeah, if you want to attend, I could register you.
Okay.
And then you would make your own hotel and per diem
Get it.
and afterwards. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a good conference. I've been a couple times.
I haven't been for many years.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's some interesting stuff. They're talking about 55 CNEL instead of 65, which is a big deal.
Oh, wow.
And they're talking about emissions, and they're talking about, there's a lot of stuff there. You've never been?
55 is Europe.
I know.
That's their standard there, yeah.
So I just think that
Great.
I haven't been in a long time. So.
Yeah, good.
And I think it'd be good for one of you or both of you.
Yeah, we've been talking about it. Thanks for bringing it up. I think like 2 months ago, I kind of highlighted that, and so we put on a list of things we want. We're trading on who's going to go to what kind of thing, and who else in the staff do we want to pull into
Gets
that.
the short straw.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, meeting review and direction to staff.
The meeting review, really good meeting. Thank you very much for clear direction and decisions. Good discussions around the major action items. I don't have any other takeaways other than the clear decisions that were made by the board. So those are the ones that we'll be following in the votes today in the action items.
Great. Okay. Are there any board member announcements? I don't have any. Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens, and Odette are absent. We adjourned at 6:56.